Hey guys, in this series, I'm just going to go over this 3D line generator. I was using Unreal Engine 5.1 and geometry scripting to create this, and it's runtime. I can press play here, and it's going to animate itself along the spline. Looks pretty nice, and then it's fully um, parameterized as well, so we can add points here. If I go Alt and drag one over, it's going to update accordingly, and it's going to update based on a distance. So if I click up top here, there's a bunch of variables I've added here. So distance between arrowheads, we can make them close together, which is, it's not good because they're overlapping, but we can make them more spaced out by changing this value. We can change the tail length, so this can be 1500 if you want to, and then we have a tail scale as well, so we can work with that to keep it parametric. So speed is how fast it goes over the animation, so that should be pretty straightforward. And then we just have an asset here, which is just a model I've done in Blender, just a cone, and just imported that in face up like this. And yeah, let's get into the code. So I will first I'll create this one already, but if you want to create your own, you go blueprint class, and it's just going to be a dynamic mesh actor that we're going to create. So go to here. The other thing you want to do as well, setting this up, is just to create a spline. So I go add spline, and as you can see here, I've already created one and just added a few points and some curves so we can see this mesh turn corners, make sure it's working right. So I'm going to delete this because this was from before, but what we're going to do is first get a time variable for our animation. So we don't just want delta seconds, it's just a small number of seconds between each tick. But what we want is accumulated amount of time. So we're going to add a variable here, accum time, and we're going to keep adding this to accum time. So get that, add here, and we're going to set that to itself plus the change in time. So as you can see here, we're just going to accumulate through delta seconds. Going to keep adding delta seconds to accum time and then setting it to itself. So it's going to climb from 0. We make sure this starts at 0, so default value is 0, and then we're going to keep climbing until we get to a high number pretty fast. But the other thing as well is going to write a function. So create one here, update mesh, and if we go back in here, we want to call that function update mesh. We also want to plug our time in as well, so we will create an input here, just call this time, and plug that in there so we can have a time in our update mesh function. So in here, I'm just going to create a few variables to get started. One is fixing up the time. So instead of time going from 0 to a really large number, we want it in the range of 0 to 1. So it goes from 0, climbs to 1, and then wraps back to 0, and climbs up to 1, so that we can have a perfect looping animation. So the way we can do that is using modulus. So if you get modulus by 1, and then create a new variable called t normalized. Normalized meaning it just goes from 0 to 1, and set that to be equal to this. The other thing we want as well is a speed variable, so we can change the time based on a number, and we want to have this initially be 1 so that it's going to go normally, but then we want to change it higher or lower, so we want to do dependent on time. So if we multiply this by speed and then plug that one into there, then now it's dependent on speed, and with it currently being 1, it's not going to change this, but if we change it to 2, it's going to be twice the speed going into here to then be normalized. So that works out well. Next thing we need to do is make another variable open to the user, which is that distance between points, those spline points, and we want this to be a integer, and we'll bring that in get them. And what we want to do, if we go over to this visual here, this distance between spline, I've denoted as x0. And what we want to do is divide the spline length by this x0 to get the number of spline points. So if this is 2.2, for example, we're going to divide that by 1,000, for example, then we're going to get 2, but actually we want 3 spline points. So we're going to cap the ends off. So we actually want 2 plus 1. So we're going to plus 1 to the end of that, and that's going to be our number of spline points. The problem with this at the moment here is these points aren't lined up properly, and there's this weird little spacing in between there that we have to deal with. So what we're going to do is generate a new x value here, such that 0 and 2 are capping off the ends, and they're in synergy with each other, basically, so it loops perfectly. And how we generate that is we're going to get the number of spline points, which is going to be 3 for this example, and then we're going to divide this total spline length by not 3 but 2. So there's only 2 lengths here, even though there's 3 points. So divide the spline length by 2, and that will give us this new x value, which is going to be our distance from the first arrow to the next arrow, and each arrow to the next corresponding arrow, basically. So hopefully that made sense. I'm just going to create a new variable, actually. So call this spline points, and this is going to be calculated. So it's going to be open to the user. So we want to tick this here, and we want to set that variable set spline points. Actually, that's going to pull up something else. Let's just go set. And as we said before, it's going to be the spline length. Spline length divided by this value here. So if we go divide, division, whole and remainder. So the spline length divided by this number, and we want to cap it. So our spline number is going to get rid of all this and just equal 3. And then we're going to add this to 1. As I said before, there's going to be 1 more point than there are distances between points, and set up like so. And then remember, going backwards, we want to minus 1 off the number of points before we try and get this new distance here. So we will subtract 1, and we will get the spline length again and divide by this number, and that's going to be equal to the new distance between points, which we haven't set up yet. So dist between points new, and that won't be public, and we'll set, actually I'll just grab this in here and set that like so. Actually, this we don't want to ensure in a float because that could be a decimal value. Cool, and no need for that anymore. Plug that straight in there, and that's our start. Setting up the time, setting up the number of points, and then in the next video we'll use this distance x to then iterate over each element in the array and append a arrowhead to them. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.